if you take marketplaces like PartsBase, ILS, Locator, Aero Exchange, AvSpares, and so on, they are a blend between commodities or parts, aftermarket parts, and repair capabilities, some more than others. So Aero Exchange caters more to airlines and people that work with airlines. ILS and PartsBase sort of work with the entire industry from OEMs down to, one or two person broker operation and everybody in between.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And this is the webinar series that we have launched. This is the first webinar that we are doing. We are really excited to have our guest today. And he is Ralph from ERP Aero. He's going to talk about all things aerospace. So we are going to be a little rusty, I guess, today in terms of the webinar, just because this is the first time. So let me see if I can bring Ralph here. Ralph, now I think you can see me, you can hear me, you can talk as well. Okay, so Ralph, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Absolutely. Sam, thank you very much. My name is Ralph Murhai. I am the CEO at ERP Aero. I've been in this position with this company for about 1.5 years, but my background for the last almost 20 years has been primarily aviation, aerospace, and defense related from my previous journey to the current one. I sort of fell into it a little bit by accident, but I loved it and I'm stuck with it. But the technology and everything that we do is very, very exciting, and I can't wait to tell you guys about it. Thank you very much for the intro.
Of course, and thank you so much for coming here. And I'm super, super interested in learning from you. I think you lived your life, inside the aerospace world. And ERP guys can pretend to know aerospace, but we know that it gets very deep. And hopefully, we can get a lot of insights from you. So, in the audience, we would love to know where you are joining from. If you want to comment. I don't know if you're able to do that. Try it out. Again, this is a new platform, new series, so we don't know what is working. If something is not working, please let us know. But so let's get started, Ralph, right? So I don't know if you are going to have some sort of deck that you are presenting. Maybe bring that up. I don't know if you're able to share your screen. Do you want to try that?
Absolutely. Give me like 4 seconds. I'm going to stop. I'm going to kill my video. And then when we're done, I'll bring my video back. Hang on 1 second.
Perfect. And I'll keep talking by then. And guys, so I can see some Q&A here. So we have Sam Graham. And Sam, thank you so much for joining. If you don't know Sam, you should be following him on LinkedIn. And Sam, if you have any sort of insights here, I know you have a lot of experience in the ERP space as well as aerospace. We would love to hear from your experiences. Guys, if you want to know about the webinar series, we have several different episodes planned. The best way to learn about them is going to be on events and webinar page on Elevate IQ website. If you sign up for our newsletter, you will be getting a lot of different notifications about future webinars. If you don't want to miss them, that is probably the easiest way of getting to know about these sessions as well as webinars. So Ralph, I don't know if you're ready now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your video is not on, I guess. I don't know if you want to turn on your video.
I'm sure. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't want there to be any lag. So as soon as I'm done sharing, I'll put my video back on if that's okay.
Yeah, that's completely okay, Ralph.
Perfect. So thank you again. I'm sorry. May I start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you again. Again, I'm Ralph Murhai. I am the CEO of ERP Aero. And as I told you, it's been almost 20 years since I've been in this industry. I've seen a lot of things. I've watched a lot of things. And that's essentially what's led me to where I am today. I'm excited to have been invited onto the show, and I think we're here today because the aerospace ERP gap is real. I believe it's very real and very expensive. And I don't think that's theory, but it is evident in retyping, compliance misses, repair work or rework, and the infamous customization trap that we've been talking about. All of that falls back in as it relates to normal ERPs, aviation-specific ERPs around DoD, OEM stuff, distribution, and all of that stuff. So my role today is very, very simple. What I'd like to do is show you what changes when the system thinks in aviation from day one, and why the architecture, not the users, I believe, are the real problems. So let's go ahead and get started. Basically, what I'm going to cover here is that the issue is not bad implementation. I think the wrong architecture, and that's a big theme for me and for us, but I think the wrong architecture for a highly regulated industry. Aviation is not just another industry. Aerospace and defense are very compliance-first industries, not necessarily general type industries. Generic ERPs assume, so some or don't have certs, they don't have lot management, serial trace, shelf life logic, routing. Those things are the things that lead to more spreadsheets, more add-ons, more middleware, and more custom turnarounds. And I believe this is where that customization trap sort of begins. So you don't fix the problem by customizing the symptoms, I believe. You fix it by using a system that was born inside the industry. So the core gaps, I think, are very, very real. RFQ intake is not active. Teams have to retype RFQs from multiple sources, sometimes 5, sometimes 10, sometimes more. The symptoms are lost quotes, delayed responses, and where we come in, we unify all sources for RFQs, whether they're from any email, any of the marketplaces that exist for aviation and aerospace and defense, like PartsBase, ILS, Locatory, Aero Exchange, and various other portals into one RFQ queue. Certs typically are not tied to the transaction. And I'm talking about really important things like 8130s and trace. They go missing all the time. So that provides regular companies using some generic ERPs with audit risks and shipment delays. ERP Aero enforces shipment attachment inside the workflow, and I'll show you that momentarily. Generally speaking, repairs sometimes are treated like inventory edits. So bills of material, labor, and tool tracking happens inside the ERP. Outside the ERP, sorry. So what that means is 20 to 40% re-entry overload. So ERP jumps in, it runs repair through a bill of material driven MRO module with quality assurance checkpoints. And then finally on this, compliance typically is manual. That's why companies that sort of implement a generic ERP still need to track their compliance, their SOPs, their QSFs for whether it's AS or ASA or ISO separately. ERP Aero auto-enforces these rules with blocking logic that is typically built in so that these things don't happen. And we provide life cycle visibility. So what I'm trying to get to here is very, very simple. Customization alone never really solves it. The key points are retrofitting a generic ERP to act like the aviation ERP is basically rewriting its data model. Every fix, it creates another dependency. By year 3, upgrades break, custom codes stop working, workflows start to cross and flows, and then the company goes back probably sooner to rely on tribal knowledge. So basically, you can't customize in traceability. You can't customize in compliance if a system wasn't built on that logic in the first place. Where we, I believe, change the equation is here. ERP Aero was not adapted to aviation. It was specifically engineered for it. And one day, maybe I'll tell you our origin story, but it's not for this conversation. But that's the core shift. ERP Aero wasn't adapted, as I was saying, to aviation. That matters a lot because every major aviation pain point, from certs to traceability to repairs to RFQs to controls, is already native in the system. So no rewiring needed. It's ready to go day one. And the reason why that matters is because it instantly eliminates the customization tax, or what I like to call the customization tax. Suppliers and repair facilities pay this every time with other providers that weren't built for aviation and aerospace specifically. So once you start with the right foundation, the next question becomes, what does it really unlock operationally? What we bring to the table, general overview, 64 aviation native modules, not after the fact, not added on afterwards. A simple RFQ to quote to PO to repair to ship to invoice process. Compliance baked in from day one, whether it's ASA, ISO, AS, FAA, EASA, it doesn't matter, it's built in. Live 80 plus dashboards that give everybody access from leadership and ownership down to the everyday user to information that is actionable. Not what happened yesterday, not what happened 2 weeks ago, actionable. And real AI, it's not a buzzword. We deployed AI last year and we added to it this year, and I'll show you guys that momentarily. The before and after, I think, is easy. Before ERP Aero, companies quote in Excel. Without an aviation-specific ERP, companies still quote in Excel. That's why companies typically have more Excel spreadsheets post-deployment than pre-deployment, because everybody gets stuck on trying to protect their ways. Before ERP Aero, MROs or repairs are tracked in PDF or whiteboards, or even worse, printed paper. After ERP Aero, all repairs are bill of material driven with work orders and enforced quality assurance sign-offs. So we help everybody basically rank their RFQs, rank their repairs, margin score, margin control, buyer intelligence, and alerts on just about everything specific to A&D as well as aviation. So ultimately, we go from no control to major control. And what that basically allows is a big impact. Generally speaking, for suppliers, we see a 3x or more faster quoting. We see 20 to 30% increase in win rates with zero missing traceability. For repair facilities, we see 100% repair lifecycle visibility, not in paper, not in PDF, not in somebody's mind, inside of ERP Aero. For defense contractors, we're ITAR ready. We have the architecture, which I'll talk about in a second, in order to be able to cover commercial and or DoD. And for ownership and leadership, live margins, RFQ, inventory aging, repair throughput, and certification ready. Not report requests, live information. So basically, the question here, in my opinion, isn't whether ERP can run aviation. It's whether you keep paying to force it to. And that's a big theme in what we do. Do you try to fit a square peg in a round hole, or do you go for something that is aviation specific? And as I mentioned before, ERP Aero is not a replacement for ERP. It's a purpose-built ERP aviation companies have been waiting for. So no matter what the needs are, no matter what the requirements are, ERP Aero is built on AWS architecture. And I say that because it's super important. AWS Commercial already supports compliance frameworks. It's FedRAMP moderate, ISO 27001, SOC 2, etc. But compliance isn't automatic. It also depends on how you architect and manage your environment. However, AWS GovCloud, on the other hand, is purpose-built for the most sensitive workloads. It supports FedRAMP High, DoD SRG, IL2 to IL5, and enabling alignment with DFARS and CMMC for defense supply chain. So whether you're running commercial or regulated aviation workloads, the architecture already exists. And architecture matters. Facts matter. The foundation matter, and the architecture always tells the truth. So ultimately, before I wrap up, I want to say this. The takeaway for me here, and hopefully for you, isn't that ERP is broken. It's that it's the wrong ERP that creates bad information in aviation. It adds to costs, compliance risk. No amount of customization can fix. It doesn't matter. If it's not built for it, you can't force it. So when the platform is built around RFQs, repairs, certs, compliance, traceability from the start, this $2 million workaround problem, it disappears. And teams that we see every single day, what they do is they finally get speed and without compromise instead of choosing between them. Everything ready from day one. And that's exactly what we bring to the table. So thank you again for the Elevate team and to everyone here for working to move the industry forward. Ultimately, What we want is the ability to be able to carry this message, and that's what I'm going to try to do today. Thank you, Sam, and let me know when it's all ready to move on.
Yeah, no, Ralph, thank you so much. Obviously, you are very passionate about the industry. You are very committed for the industry, and we can see that in your commentary. Before we move to the demo, I guess we have one
Yes,
very
sir.
interesting question here that I want to attack, and I don't know if you are going to have any sort of context, on that. You can keep your screen on if you like. There's no problem at all. So I am going to provide some context more from the
Okay.
ERP industry perspective, and then you can provide how you guys handle that maybe in your system. So here Sam has a question, and guys, if you have any questions, comments, please comment them, and we would love to cover them. So here Sam is saying, hey, when I was in the aero industry, changing suppliers for an item and even moving production of an item, and he has corrected that, I guess, item were major deals. It'll be interesting to hear how Ralph's system manages and control these. So in general, Sam, from my experience, what I have personally seen, again, depending upon what you are talking about from the production perspective, generally you are going to have some sort of mes involved depending upon how the architecture is. If they are handling all the processes inside erp, I don't know how many of them generally connect with a real machine. Some of them might do that, but for the most part, erp is simply going to give you a plan. But when you have to make the real change, then you get into the real integrated system with the machine, I guess. So that's how most are going to handle that. But obviously from the erp perspective, you have to change that inside your ERP plan, but that's not probably going to be the real world. So, Ralph, maybe you provide context in terms of what you are seeing in your space based on this question.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot, so I'm going to try my best to address everything that I think that I heard. So thank you for the question. One of the best things I love about this company, really do from day one, which is one of the reasons why I'm here, is that ERP Aero adapts very quickly. Well, our motto is not, this is how it's done, this is what you have to change it to. So depending on how far or how close you want to abide by procedures and workflows, we can adapt ERP Aero to fit your business as close as possible. And it starts from the top. So we talked a little bit about parts. We give you and I'll show you that in a minute, but we give you the ability not just to manage parts, but to manage all of your capabilities. We give you the ability to manage your on-hand inventory. We separately but collectively give you the ability to manage your consignment lots, no matter how many you have, and the ability to manage all of your OEM catalogs. That's a big problem for me, and I'm going to take 30 seconds and explain why. Based on my history in this company, one of the biggest problems aerospace and aviation companies, even defense companies, sort of run across is when they're trying to display their capabilities on the various marketplaces that exist. And you usually have one person at that company whose job it is to combine all catalogs, all consignment, all inventory into one singular Excel spreadsheet to upload it to the marketplaces. They don't allow for that separate management that usually is needed. To make a long story short, by giving our customers the ability to be able to manage and measure every single capabilities, including repairs, by the way, every single capabilities, that process is virtually automated through API connectivity to those marketplaces. So there's no more combination of Excel spreadsheet. You ever wonder why you see somebody with available inventory, but when you go to buy it, they tell you the ERP was wrong? And the reason why they tell you that is because they're usually still managing their capabilities via Excel, and somebody forgot to update the Excel spreadsheet. ERP Aero eliminates that risk, and it sort of flows into a lot of things, keeping the compliance and keeping the regulations that are specific to aviation in mind and top of mind. From ASA compliance to manufacturing standards, whether it's ISO or AS, all of that is built in. And I'm going to show you some of that also in a little bit as well. So I hope I caught everything. If not, let me know and I'll go back into it.
So, Sam, I don't know if that answers your question. If you have any follow-up questions, obviously, please, comment them in the chat box. So, Ralph, I'm going to have some follow-up questions for you, and then probably we can move to your demo, right?
Yes,
So, the
sir.
marketplaces that you have shown, and I completely agree with your, assessment there that quoting estimation process is always challenging across industry types, and MRO is probably not going to be any sort of exception. But the marketplaces that you have pointed out there, even inside aviation industry, you are going to have several different micro verticals. They are going to have their own sort of product types, their own sort of estimation process. So is this specific to MRO, or is that across the board among aviation micro industries? I would assume that that's probably just for MROs, right?
No, the capabilities are specific to
I'm talking
MROs.
about the marketplaces that you had there, in terms of the
I
integration.
apologize. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that goes across. So if you take marketplaces like PartsBase, ILS, Locatory, Aero Exchange, AvSpares, and so on, they are a blend between commodities or parts, aftermarket parts, and repair capabilities, some more than others. So Aero Exchange caters more to airlines and people that work with airlines. ILS and PartsBase sort of work with the entire industry from OEMs down to, one or two person broker operation and everybody in between. AvSpares facilitates RFQs between companies. Locatory does the same thing that PartsBase and ILS do. So that's all over the place. And our ability to be able to connect with them through API, in my opinion, changes the game, because we don't have to parse emails. We don't have to use our customers' usernames and passwords to log in on their behalf and capture information. So the data is live. You sell something today, it shows as gone in 2 minutes, and it's updated virtually in real time. And that sort of takes away the responsibility of having somebody update a spreadsheet, to update inventory, to update repair capabilities, to update anything else that they're selling.
Okay, so Sam does have a follow-up, comment here, and obviously he's very seasoned. He has literally lived his life in the ERP industry, so his questions are going to be very, 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 very specific. So Ralph, you might want to listen up closely here. So what he is asking is, I'm wondering, for example, the system will block the purchase of an item from a supplier who is not approved supplier for that item. So
Absolutely. The short answer is yes, and that could also be customizable. So obviously, if you're AS certified or ASA accredited, there are certain rules you have to follow. The workflows can be meant to absolutely mirror that. The system can also be meant to warn you, but absolutely it will block something if it's not an approved supplier. And the status of that supplier, for a lot of reasons, for standards, for real day, for audit prep, audit defense, is very, very important. So the short answer is yes.
okay, so Sam, I don't know if that answers your question. Please feel free to post any sort of comments that you have based on what you could follow along. If not, please comment. All right, Ralph. So I think we can dive into the demo. Maybe you can show us how the integration work and different bombs and the estimation bomb, maybe how they are different from different ERP industries, and maybe you can line up with the procurement process as well. How these vendors are going to be not vendors, I guess the product is going to be blocked, I guess, and that's what he's asking, if my understanding is right. He said the purchase
I'll
of
do
an
my
item,
best.
right?
I'll do my best to remember to get into that, because that's a section that I'm going to. And either Sam, if I get there and forget about it, stop me and I'll show you.
I'm gonna remind you, don't worry.
All right, hang on 1 second. Please give me a thumbs up if you see my screen.
It's coming up. Yeah, I can see the login screen right now.
Okay.
And yeah, and guys, if you can see, please give us the thumbs up as well, or some comment in the chat.
I need 10 seconds on this page, and only to mention that every single ERP Aero customer gets their own deployment, which means anybody's data has zero chances of commingling or overlapping with somebody else. It's your very own deployment. Nobody else is in on that box or server. Nobody. So let's log in. As the screen is loading, here's my best explanation of what's up on the screen. It is a whole bunch of dashboards that are important to me. And I want to say that because our customers are not relegated to looking at a singular dashboard that we think is important. So we give our customers the ability to look at multiple dashboards, even create their own dashboard if it doesn't exist. So what we're looking at on the screen, if I were a daily user, it's my ability to be able to look at my open invoices. It's my ability to be able to look at my parts transfer or shelf life reports at a glance, not in detail. It's my ability to look at my new business funnel and do a whole lot of other things. Now, this data here is more than basic, but less than advanced. And it's also exportable. Every single piece, every single dashboard on this page you can save to Excel in order to play with it later. So whether your style is on screen or manual, like I like to do sometimes, you have the capability to do that. And all of the dashboards are actually accessible on the left-hand side. I only have about 20 or 25 built, but there is no limit on what I can do other than if it becomes not practical. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. The second thing that I wanted to point out before we dive in for a more of a micro view, I want to point out a macro view. It's my ability to be able to look at everything, the entire universe per part number. And we call that global visibility. And it's accessible with this blue globe button. So when it pulls up, let me cover a couple of things because there's a lot of data here. So I would need to put in a part number. And then once I search, let me briefly but quickly and take you through this in detail. This is giving me a 360-degree view into this part number. I know everybody who's buying it. I know how many sales we've done. I know how many RFQs we have against it. I know if it exists in one of my catalogs or consignments. I know how many pieces I have in inventory. And I also know whether, the 88 chapters that this part belongs to. So ultimately, this is a global visibility by part, and then I can get into the sales orders or the vendor quotes or anything else directly from this page. Now, it doesn't stop right here. Two things that I wanted to point out. Number one, we can edit this particular view to add or remove any things that you do or don't want to see. Number two, we integrate with a lot of things, and a couple of things that are relevant here that are turned on in terms of integration is the integration with Avref, which is a commercial cross-reference company that provides really good data that I've known about for the last 15 or 16 years. If the connection is on, that data is shown up there. And in this case, I'm also connected to market pricing from PartsBase, which can be repeated for other marketplaces, but market prices for PartsBase, which tells me the min-max prices and the median prices, and whether or not anybody is listing that repair capability for that part number on PartsBase. I have access to that. If I wanted to look at them at the same time, I can just click the I button. Just want to show that it's a combination of the two, which gives me that look. And this is going to come into play in other places of the website. So of the platform. So let me dive in. I have a list of things that I think are important that I want to take you through. I think most of them cover most of what you're looking for. But Sam, as you mentioned before, stop me if you have any questions. Anybody stop me if you have any questions.
I do have, some questions, and if I see anything from audience, obviously I'm going to, ask those as we go along. So
Okay.
you have some things called, 88 chapters here. Maybe
Yes,
talk
sir.
about that. What is the relevance of that? Because that's very unique. You are not going to
Of
find that
course.
with other ERP systems. So,
Absolutely. So it is extremely unique, and I'll get into that a second time when I go to parts and inventory, but this gives me basically an idea of the aircraft model that this part goes on, the chapter or the category that it's actually designated for in the nomenclature and in the description. So it's not quite, but it's almost like a next higher assembly for airplane parts. So the part goes into an assembly, the assembly goes on a wing, it's the wing of an A320. So it gives that ability for me to know exactly what the part is and where it goes on.
So going back to your comment related to data model, that you feel that other ERP systems, you have to rewire the data model, right? And in your case, you have data model designed for that. So let's say, in this particular case, obviously this is going to be the whole BOM. And generally with other ERP systems, they are going to have the BOM, and they are going to use BOM to design all of these things. And it's not going to be a different inventory. So in your case, the chapters are different from your core parts inventory, or is it the same inventory?
It's the same inventory. It's the other way around. The 88 chapters define the parts and where they go, and it's published by the FAA. It's an industry accepted standard, which gives additional visibility. You don't need the 88 chapters to do most of the business, but the more you have in terms of information, the better you understand the transaction. And a lot of companies like OEMs and even distributors find the information invaluable because it gives them an idea of the intended use and the end item identification.
Okay, very interesting. So some more questions. I saw on your dashboard shelf life,
Mhm.
and shelf life is very common in several different industries. For
It is.
example, let's say if you go to agriculture or food,
Yep.
that's where, or grocery, that's where you are going to find shelf life. So why is shelf life important for, let's say, MRO? Why do they care for that? Is it part of some sort of compliance, from the parts perspective? What are the processes that are driven by shelf life?
Okay, it's the part. It's what it is and whether or not it goes bad after a while. So, for example, if you have an engine, it might be an indefinite type of life, but I need to clarify what I mean by that. So there are two shelf lives that come into play. One for a shelf life limited part, which means it expires after a certain date. And no matter what, you're not allowed to use it. You break the rules if you do. There's a life limited part, which basically can live, let's say, for 20 years. Let's say an engine, it has only so many cycles in it. It's not going to spin forever. So you also need to track how long it's been in operation, technically how many cycles it's gone through, because beyond a certain point, you're no longer supposed to or should be able to use it. So the more information you have about those parts, the less likelihood you are to make a mistake and either use a part that expired 2 months ago or use an engine that is no longer fit for service.
So I'm going to have one more question if you don't mind.
Not at
So
all.
what is the correlation between shelf life and serial number? Because generally in your industry, I guess serial numbers are going to be far more important because you have to track and repair all of those items uniquely. Do you guys have serial number? Do you not have serial number? If you have serial number, what is the correlation of serial number with your shelf life?
It's a more complicated answer, but I'm going to simplify it as best as I can. You're right.
Okay.
Aviation and aerospace, even defense, because it's very, very related, is a serialized industry. So a lot of the relevant and important parts that are being used typically have a serial number. What you don't see serial numbers for is more like consumables and expendables. So hardware, for example, you're going to get a box of nuts or a box of screws. They're not serialized. It doesn't matter. It's quantities what matter. It has an end item use or an end item application that it goes on. So it's a combination of the two. And typically speaking, shelf life can be for both serialized and unserialized parts. For example, if you were to buy industrial cleaners in bulk, not necessarily kitted down to certain sizes or volumes. In bulk, it might expire after 12 months, but the actual drum that contains the chemical or the cleaner in it is not necessarily a serialized type of part. So there's a correlation, but it's not a one-to-one correlation.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, now if you want to keep going with your demo, you can do that. I don't see any other questions. Guys, if you have any questions, any comments, any curiosity or experiences that you want to share, we would love to see that. By the way, one question here, Ralph.
Mhm.
So I think it's coming from Sam again, and he's saying, can specific items have both a serial number and lot number? And then you can correlate that with shelf life as
Correct.
well. My assumption is going to
Correct.
be you are going to have shelf life because that is at the part level, at the inventory level, and then serial number are going to be at the specific item level, and then lot is going to be at the group level. So can you
Correct.
have both serial and lot?
Yes, you can.
Okay, and can you have multiple? Sometimes I've seen requirements that you have multiple lot number and multiple serial numbers, and generally that is in pharma. I don't know if you guys have that requirement as well.
No, it exists. It definitely exists in aviation and aerospace and exists in automotive and a lot of other places. Absolutely. But again, as you said it correctly, those are all part of the part actual management. And I'll show you that in a minute.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we don't have any other questions, Ralph. So keep going
Okay.
with your demo. Yeah.
All right. So during the presentation at the beginning of the call, I mentioned a couple of numbers. The first one was 64 aviation native modules. Now, it sounds like a lot. Obviously, the core modules that manage aviation, like RFQs, quotes, POs, sales orders, invoices, repair orders, all of those exist. But ERP Aero also provides you the ability to or manage sub modules. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. So let's first take a look at part of the CRM and ERP Aero. And it's super important, even though it doesn't seem like it is in most parts, but it's super important because this will help you manage your customers or accounts. And it's also going to help you manage your vendors all in one place, not two separate records, one record for either or both. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. So let's take a customer in the actual CRM. You'll notice on the top left-hand side, this is designated as a customer and they are designated as a vendor. And it all goes by one record. And it's super important because non-aviation specific ERPs tend to make you manage two records, one for the customer and one for the vendor. But there are other benefits. But this basically helps our customers to be able to gather as much information as possible about their prospects, but mainly customers. Because one of the things that ERP Arrow believes in is if you give us the information once, you never have to put it in again. So if I have the information about my customer, I don't have to provide it again on any transaction in any stage of what we are potentially working on. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. The CRM is also going to aggregate all of the customer specific information. So I have access to all of their RFQs. I have access to all of their quotes, SOs or sales orders, and purchase orders. Everything will be managed or accessible from one place, which makes certain reporting easier, but it also gives you a complete picture. I have access to their recent transactions at a glance, and I also have access to which employees or contacts at that company are actually placing the orders with me. Now, I'm going to stop a little bit here at account details because this sort of ties to the first question, I believe, from Sam earlier. This is also where I'm going to designate whether or not the actual customer is approved, not approved, on hold, or conditionally approved. I will point out, I'd be remiss if I didn't, that this is not a finite list of statuses. So we deal with companies that have 6 statuses or 5 statuses or 7 statuses, and that's easily put in. Everywhere in ERP Arrow that you see a drop menu or a pick list, it could be customized for that company. And typically that's done after the onboarding questionnaire as we're doing the implementation. But if this customer or a vendor is designated as not approved, yes, 100% the transactions for that customer can be blocked. As a matter of fact, they can be blocked for multiple reasons, but this goes back specifically to Sam's question at the beginning.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I guess the question that you are referencing is the vendor one, right? Because he was asking about blocking
Correct.
the item. So, but I assume that your statuses are going to be similar at the vendor level as well.
Yeah, supplier/vendor, absolutely. So if that vendor is not an approved vendor or an approved supplier, the system can definitely be set to block transactions, because if you have to have an ASL or approved suppliers list and that vendor is not on that list and you buy from them, that's a very not good problem to have.
Yeah, I have one question. So you have a fleet size there at the customer level. Can you go up a little bit on the screen? The fleet size at the customer level for our audio listeners as well. Why do you have fleet size? Because that is generally not seen at the customer level with other ERP system. Fleet size.
We have it in 2 places. So we have it here for get to know your customer. So it tells us if that customer has X number of craft and so on. And we also have a fleet module that allows you to manage each individual aircraft. And it's just get to know your customer, know more information. So if this company, in this case, it's United Airlines, but it could be anybody else. If they have the fleet information already entered in the module to manage the specific crafts, that information can be mirrored or displayed here in order to do it, so that you don't have to go to fleet. You don't have to search for the customer. You have an idea of how big their fleet is when you're looking at the customer or vendor record.
Okay, is that going to drive some sort of repair processes? Are you doing some sort of customer ranking based on that? Fleet size?
All of that comes in. So for reporting, for example, our reporting is live, and almost every data header that you see on just about every page is reportable. It might not be relevant for me, for example, but for somebody else, having statistics about services for those fleets or the size of the fleet or any combination in between those two things is very, very important. Which goes back to what I said in terms of the more you know your customer as an ERP Arrow user, the less likely you are to have to re-enter information. But what I added to it was your reporting is going to improve almost exponentially, because you're tracking information that is maybe typically tracked in Excel or in somebody's head or on somebody's computer. And we put all of our customers into a position where ERP Arrow is truly their single source for truth.
Okay, so some more questions there, if you don't mind. So I can
Not
see
at
some
all.
KPIs there that I don't think exist in the other industries. So you have line quote ratio, you have
Yep.
value head ratio, you have another line hit ratio, I guess.
Yep.
So maybe describe, where these KPIs are used. Are those specific to MRO industry? How they are used, in which context, what the purpose that they serve?
Sure. They are, again, designed to get you to know the customer. Now, two things I want to point out. I cannot edit those values. Those are system generated, and they're system generated for a reason. It's going to give me an idea, and I'm going to give you an example of how it's used. It's going to give me an idea, for example, of how many RFQs this particular customer has sent me, and it's going to give me an idea of how many purchases they made from me. So when I'm looking at them, if over the last year they've sent me 3,000 RFQs but made 0 purchases, the likelihood of them becoming a newer customer sort of significantly diminishes.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at their line hit ratio, especially if it's over 100%, that means they're regular buyers. The value hit and the line hit ratio are one and the same. One of them talks about the quantity, the other one talks about the revenue that is associated. But this gives me an idea. Again, let's take it from the top real quick, the average revenue that they're bringing into me, and then the specific percentages that are tied to that revenue here. And mind you, I want to point out that this isn't the reporting that I mentioned before, but we'll bring that in before we get off the call.
Yeah, perfect. Yep, keep going.
Okay.
Whatever you want to show. Yeah, please. Thank you.
The next thing that I wanted to show is super important because we also give our customers the ability to treat their customers as they see fit. So what you're looking at highlighted on the screen right now is the pricing information. Let me define that. Let's just say I am the supplier and the customer record on the screen is my customer. Now, if I wanted to tier their pricing, and that could be any one of many different things, but for example, if the order value is over 100,000, their margin will be 10%. If the overall value is over 50,000, their margin is going to be 15%. If their overall value of any order is 10,000 or greater, the margin is going to be 20%. This can be done for pricing, this can be done for quantity or any combinations in between. But this also ties to something that I hope to discuss, but I don't know if we'll have time for. One of the benefits of ERP Aero is it's also an e-commerce engine. So when our customers are selling their parts in the e-commerce store, this also provides them the ability to show pricing based on geography, which is a whole other subject that we can eventually get to. But the pricing information allows the supplier to tier the pricing for their customer down to the customer level. And then what remains on the bottom of the page are some more actual information that sort of tie back to the customer. The one that I wanted to point out is I can, well, not me personally, but my compliance or accounting department will be able to assign a credit limit to any customer, which means if they start to exceed that credit, we can block transactions and force them to prepay for their purchases. But that's, the credit limit is a manual value. The remaining credit is an automated value that sort of takes into account all of the transactions, how much they owe and how much have they paid, and it calculates it every single day based on that. So all in the
So,
CR.
Ralph, I
Yes,
do
sir.
have some questions, and we have some questions from the audience as well. We want to cover them. And if we are not able to cover all the topics from the agenda, that's completely okay. We'll create sort of a Disney movie here. We
Okay.
will finish right at the point when we are going to pick their interest, and then we are going to have the part two, of the
Okay.
webinar. We'll bring you
Sure.
back.
No
so
worries.
the
This is
so
about you, not me.
so the questions that we have from the audience, but before that I have one question here. So this says sync to QB account, and QB account, I don't know if that is going to be QuickBooks, and if that is going to be QuickBooks, do you have your accounting module, or do you generally interface with QuickBooks?
The short answer to that question is we have basic accounting, but we recommend and we generally, for 99% of our customers, interface with QuickBooks, Xero, Sage, or any other accounting provider. But predominantly, it's those three, no matter where in the world you look. QuickBooks mainly in the US, Xero mainly in Europe, and Sage sort of all over the place.
Okay, very interesting. So some more questions, from the audience, and Sam
Okay.
is saying a supplier might be approved for item X, but not item Y. And I'll provide some context here, Rolf, in terms of how this functionality works in other ERP systems. So generally, the way the process is going to be, item means every single inventory part that you are going to have,
Hmm.
whether they are going to be raw materials, web, or the finished good. They are going to have some sort of vendor hierarchy, and then they are also going to have the approval status, at the supplier level. So that's how you
Hmm.
sort of track, that whether a supplier is going to be approved for a specific item. And Sam, you can comment on that as well. Obviously, you are very seasoned and you know this functionality. If we are aligned on the expectations here, but generally you are going to have approved supplier at that level, at the vendor cross reference level. So I don't know if you have all of those hierarchies established in your item to vendor relationship or correlation that you have as part of your model.
It is part of the model. It's customer specific. I can tell you with absolute certainty that probably greater than 98% of our current customers do not require that specific requirement. But for the 2% that do, we have the ability to bundle in whatever standard they follow, whether it's ISO, AS, or ASA, for example, primarily for aviation and aerospace. And then with the definitions and the QSFs and the SOPs that are part of that standard based on their quality manual, we can incorporate that into their workflow. But that's the best both ways answer I can provide to that question.
Okay, amazing. So I have one more question here
Yes,
from
sir.
another person, and we don't have a name for them here, but that's okay. But the question is, how are aerospace modules different from standard ERP modules used in other industries? So I think you did mention a lot at the features and functions level, but I don't know if there are going to be any specific modules that are different for MRO or aerospace industry.
There are, and I'm going to do my best to get to them, like we talked about. But overall, this is going to seem like I'm taking both sides. Overall, a quote module or an RFQ module is almost identical, regardless of anything else. What makes our RFQ module more aerospace and aviation specific, especially for compliance, is how we tie in tag and trace and certification down to the transactions. And I will make some time to show you part of that before, but there are a lot of different ways. Again, if you're ASA accredited, you follow one standard. If you're AS certified, there's another standard. And depending on how QMS is written and what your procedures are, we can tailor around that. So our ability to be able to take those aviation and aerospace requirements and tie them inside of ERP Aero is what makes us more able to tend to some of these aerospace requirements. But there is no, there is no X marks the spot that this makes a quote module an aerospace versus anybody else. Ultimately, the management, it looks about the same, but the underlying workflows and functionalities is what distinguishes it. And the ability to tie in tag and trace and certification to the transaction sort of separates it even further.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering those questions. Guys, if you have any other questions, please comment them. And Ralph, you can move on with your demo. Just a little
Okay.
time check. I think we still have 10 minutes. So
Okay.
whatever you want to show us. Yeah.
I'm gonna, just as an FYI, I'm gonna spend 2 minutes on one thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the call, which is inventory catalogs and consignment, and I'm gonna dive right into the RFQ and quotes module to sort of bring it home. So the next thing I'm going to show very, very briefly, I mentioned during the introduction that we give our customers the ability not just to manage their inventory. So again, what you're looking at on the screen is everything that I have on the shelf. I want to also separate that by everything that I have total access to, which is more like my master repository, and that's great. But we also add to that the ability to be able to manage your vendor or OEM catalogs. So for example, every item that you see here on my screen is a catalog from an OEM, which means I have an agreement with that OEM. I can resell their product at a certain price. And for me, the way that I look at that is that's almost as good as on-hand inventory. So if we take a look at that a little bit further, what belongs to this Yokohama catalog are all of these parts. Each part is also manageable down to the granular level, just like the company was. So we have the part information, we have measure information, we have all of the places that we have that part, we have all of the parts transaction tied to that part. We have revenue summary. We have the recommended selling price that you can put in there based on condition codes, not just the general selling price. You have the ability to upload as many pictures and add a gallery as you want. And then the rest of this information is fully about those parts. But I also wanted to tie it directly to the consignment, which again, a lot of companies in aviation, they sell other companies' parts. That's how a consignment is defined. So if I were the supplier or the broker and I'm selling 4 different lots, I don't need to put them all in one spreadsheet anymore. I can manage each of them individually. And just like with inventory and just like with catalogs, I have the ability to manage each down to the parts level. And then obviously the units of measure that I tried to show before are more evident right here. The recommended selling price in this case is $1,000 for new condition. And if there's another RSP or recommended selling price for different condition codes, I'm able to put that in. But all of that information is sort of managed at the part level, but our customers are able to control each purpose separately. So inventory on hand is managed individually, consignment and catalogs, each is managed individually. And all of that is what leads to how you ultimately generate revenue, and more importantly, what the cost of sales is, because obviously the lower your cost of sale, the higher your margin is, and that's what we're in business to do. Which means we've arrived at the RFQ module, and I'm going to spend 2 minutes on here because it's super important. I talked before about fragmentation. I talked about middleware and plugins that are not needed. So with non-aviation specific ERPs, but even unfortunately with some that are more aviation centric, you still need outside services to make the ERP work. You need an RFQ company to plug into your ERP to get you all of your RFQs. You need outside compliance to be able to create something for you to track your certs, your training, your calibration, and all of that. All of that is built into ERP Aero. So what we're looking at on the screen, I'm going to start with RFQs, are all open RFQs from any source that I have access to. So these are going to be RFQs from PartsBase that I'm getting via API, from ILS and Locatory that I'm getting via API, from Aero Exchange that I'm getting via email and API, from email. Basically, if you have an RFQ at yourdomain.com and you get RFQs there, that's what the email would be. They're all going to be processed here. And then there's another one called Email AI. If you have non-standard email RFQs, the technology that is built in will read regardless of the format. So we use parsing for certain emails and we use AI for other emails in order to be able to pull up your RFQs. But the main message here before I move forward is all of your RFQs are in one place and they don't require an outside service or more plugins and middleware in order for our customers to conduct their business. And that's a big differentiator between ERP Aero and most other ERPs that exist, even the ones that claim they are more aviation centric. So again, looking at the screen, there's 2 things I want to point out before I move. I have all of the headers that are relevant for me. What's in blue are RFQs that that I haven't seen yet. I can change that color. That's easy customization that can be done per user. I'm looking on the screen. I know what my value in stock is and what my estimated price is based on my history. So I can filter and sort my RFQs to take care of the higher probability RFQs without having to just rely on AutoQuote, for example. And the last thing I'll point out before we move forward from here is almost every page in ERP Aero, we can configure our view, which means if I'm the user and I'm looking at these data headers for my RFQs and I see something that I want, I don't have to make it a wish list item. I can just configure my view and add what I want. So if I wanted to look at condition, which I should have been looking at to begin with, or if I wanted to look at any other value, I can just absolutely alter my view and save it so that I don't have to do it again. I can even share it and make it public. So if I'm the manager and I have a sales team of 10 people, I don't have to customize 10 views. I can customize one and share that view with my 10 people. And then ultimately, when I get back to my RFQs, everything is on one page. So it really is an almost standalone component that is the heart of ERP Aero that brings all revenue opportunities for any of our customers onto one screen.
Okay. So some questions there.
Yep,
If
that's
you
why I paused.
just a little, time check. So we have just 4 minutes right now. If you have any
Yep,
other items that you want to cover, you can cover those, or I can ask questions. We don't have any questions from audience right now.
there's one thing I can cover, and then you can tell me if I should go on or cover it in a subsequent part. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as we can conclude in 4 minutes. Yeah,
I need 30 seconds, and then I'll rely on you to tell me what to do next.
perfect.
So I'm going to pick a random RFQ. This is something that I've never looked at. I like this one right here. It's estimated to be at $256,000. The actual source is ILS. I'm going to pick the RFQ. So it's going to take me to that RFQ. My first view is every single part they're asking an RFQ for, a quote for, along with parts statistics, so I know what I need to do. Number two, I want to point out that if I have the number in stock, you're going to see this green stock button right here. Number three, I'm going to show you very quickly all of the different sources that I can answer my RFQ with. I can look at my vendor history and broker the transaction. I can look at the eMarts like PartsBase and ILS, find live availability, and be able to buy the part and resell it myself. And it's as easy as clicking one button and selecting the customer and sending them an RFQ. But let me just move on. I've got 14 seconds left. I can look at my historical quotes and clone my quotes so I can save time instead of having to just recreate quotes. I can look at my catalogs if they belong in my catalog. I can look at everything coming into my warehouse, and I can sell directly from inventory, except if that part is already reserved, meaning it's part of another transaction. So as you see, it will not allow me to double sell any single part. And I can do the same thing based on alternates, kits, consignment, and I can manage my repairs with the bill of material and the work order that already exists. What you see on the right-hand side is a granular way of controlling margin, which means if I wanted to broker this transaction, I'm going to pick a vendor and I'll point your eyes to the right-hand side on the screen. I don't think 3750 is a high enough margin, even though it's preset at 20%. If I wanted to sell it at 5,000, I can just lock it in, send the offer out, and we're there. So I'm going to stop right here out of respect for your time and to allow any more questions to sort of come in potentially.
Yeah, so I have one question, and I think audience. I don't have any other questions from the audience. They really enjoyed the session, which is good sign. So
Good.
sounds like we have done our job. So the question, I think you had diversity at the part level. So what is diversity? Is that very specific to MRO, or what is that used for?
I'm sorry, can I ask you to tell me what you mean by diversity at
Go
the part level?
go to your part screen, I guess. I don't know if you're able to get there.
You're talking about the RFQ screen or the actual part screen?
The part screen.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah, there you have diversity. Yeah.
This screen?
Oh, hold on. Let me. Now I'm not able to find myself, I guess. This one is part detail, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right there. Yep. You
Okay.
found it?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
So this basically, I mean, these are all statistics on how that part is moving. So let's take it at the top. The SQ ratio is the sales to quote ratio. So it's going to tell me that ratio is 200%, which means I'm closing half of my RFQs, and that's a super, super good thing to have.
Yeah.
The diversity is something that can and should be defined by a company. So as you see, it is not an editable item. I can't get into it. But it's going to give me, so let's just say you define your inventory in a certain way and you assign, let's say, a numeric value for each definition. Based on how you manage your company, we're able to display that value. And in this case, it's 2. and the condition code that is most asked for is new. So it's going to give you a little bit more insight about what's moving, how it ties to your standards, and what the condition that is being sought for and sold the most.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Ralph, for that answer. Really helpful. And now I think we need to conclude the webinar. I just want to thank you for your time and insights. Grateful, for what you have done here in this session. Ralph, I don't know if you are going to have any sort of final words before we conclude.
I just want to say one thing, and then I'm going to say thank you, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay. The one thing that I wanted to say, and I'll gladly go through this with anybody in the future to show all of the compliance issues, but what I forgot to point out is I have access to all of the tags and trace. I have access to all of the product images, and I have access to how much business I've done with any company or vendor. And if I use that vendor, all of that certification is going to be passed through to the quote, to the sales order, and ultimately to close the deal. So I know that was a lot, so I'll gladly take additional answers or stay on, whatever the case may be. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you very, very much for inviting me to be on here. Just like with anything else in my life, I was nervous as nervous can be before the call, but it goes away as soon as I open my mouth. I'm very grateful to have met you. I will hope to speak with you and or anybody else again. If you have any questions, find me on LinkedIn. I put out a lot of information on LinkedIn. My name is Ralph Merhi, M-E-R-H-I. I'm the CEO of ERP Aero. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you once again, Ralph. And I know that when we are covering the ERP functionality, I guess 1 hour is never going to be enough. So
Right.
most likely we are probably going to invite you back because obviously there is a lot that we can cover, with your product and the kind of work that you are doing. So once again, thank you so much for doing this. This is very helpful for our audience, and hopefully everybody has some sort of learning experience from this. Make sure you guys follow Ralph. He's amazing. He looks like as if he worked in Hollywood before. And he can also play golf if you want to chat about that. He can go all day on that as well. All right, guys. So I think from the webinar series perspective, we are going to have many different sessions. So keep an eye on our webinar page. We are going to publish all of those on social media. They are going to be published as LinkedIn events. We'll try our best to notify you if you care for these webinars. If you are missing on any of those, obviously feel free to reach out to me at any point of time or anybody from Elevate IQ. On that note, thank you so much once again for tuning in. I'll see you in the next webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.